Ms. Meeks.
So everyone, thanks again for coming. My name is Tanya Meeks. I'm a consultant working on this project as part of a Complexity Group. My job here is to help out, listen, provide any assistance in the chat box. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. This meeting is of course being recorded, and we'll certainly pull the audio from the recording to use later to pull what your recommendations were throughout the conversation. When you speak today, be sure to announce who you are for the sake of the recording, and what your position is. And you don't have to continue doing it throughout the conversation, but ever so often when you start to speak, just remind us of who you are, and it's all just for the sake of the audio. I think that's it. I think that's all the housekeeping, and without further ado, both the councilwoman and the chairman can take over the meeting.
Okay, we also want to say if you want to speak, make a notation in the chat box, or raise your hand, or wave, or we'll identify you. Okay. Okay, Ms. Meeks. Okay. Again, thank you so much for participating today. Taking up the time of your schedule to be with us. I'm sure some of you are aware of what's taking place in regards to reimagining the policing services here in Memphis, but we thought we'd give you a brief overview before we start, so we'll have a clear understanding of what's taking place. And it's Mayor Strickland announces Advisory Council on Reimagining Policing. Strickland administration announced the creation of an Advisory Council on Reimagining Policing in Memphis, which is phase 2 of this work. Phase one of the process entails listening to the protesters and making immediate improvements as recommended. Ms. Meeks. Adopting, need to go back one, I'm sorry. Adopting the 8 can't wait principle, improving curve. Next. Prohibiting the no-knock warrants, extending the academy training by 1 week, adding cultural sensitivity training, continuing to review policies to reduce excessive force by our police officers. And we have been informed that these particular discussions will continue to take place, but we're here to go into phase 2. The Advisory Council will work with members of the community to find substantive, realistic, and measurable ways to improve community relations with law enforcement, enhance accountability and transparency within the Memphis Police Department, and make recommendations of use of force policies. Phase 2 continue over the next 45 days. The Advisory Council will be meeting with members of the community to bring forth their initial and immediate actionable solutions. Once they bring those initial recommendations, the group will reconvene and continue working with members of the community for an additional 45 days to make that final recommendations and present them to the administration. The ACRP committee includes clergy, which will work with the faith-based community representing various religions. The civil rights will work with activists and nonprofit organizations. The legislative will work with constituents, neighborhood groups, and the business community. And law enforcement will reach out to other enforcement agencies and act as a resource to the group as a whole. I want to read to you a quote from Mayor Strickland. I want to say thank you to the members of the advisory group and community leaders such as yourself for signing up to help us do this difficult but important work. Second, I want to reiterate how proud I am of the men and women of the Memphis Police Department and the work that they do every day for our city. Thank you for joining us today and participate in this ACRP Legislative Committee Focus Group meeting. Then the next question I think should be addressed is, why are we participating? Commissioner Jones, can you begin that and say, why are you participating in this committee?
Absolutely. So first, I want to thank Mayor Strickland for just inviting me to be a part of this. But this is important work for me. I have actually walked in both shoes. So I've been a police officer for Memphis, 15 years, done that work. So I actually have firsthand knowledge of how they operate. Secondly, I've been a community person, just deeply in love with the community, did a lot of work around that. So I certainly hear the voices of the community as it relates to reimagining policing. Thirdly, I'm now an elected official, a legislator, local legislator, and have the powers and impact within my hands, seen as if at least 6 more of my colleagues can agree with me to push something forward. And that's why this work is important for me, so that we get it right when we make these recommendations on how to reimagine policing. That's why, I am participating to make sure that the impact that I can have in reimagining police is meaningful, not just to one person, but to everyone that lives within Shelby County and all of its municipal.
Thank you, Chair Jones, for that information. Well, personally, I decided to participate is because I just believe it's time up. It's time up for us to just stop talking about babies being killed, talking about stealing, carjacking. And then when you look around, you realize it begins with yourself. And it's up to me to make a difference if I'm going to encourage other people to make a difference and participate. This problem that we have before us will not be solved by one individual. It's going to take a community, everybody working together. And that's what I hope, that I can be a role model to others, to say that if I can take the time out of my business schedule and start working with different groups, talking to the kids, talking to different associations, whatever it takes, that's what I want to do to make a difference here in the community. It's not about one particular problem. In order to correct the setting that we're dealing with, we're going to have to deal with things on the educational level. We're going to have to deal with health issues. We're going to have to deal with housing issues. And dealing with reimagining the policeman is just a beginning point. So I said, this is just as good as any other beginning point, and I'm willing to give it a try. I'm willing to be that role model and be out there to help others and try to make a difference. And that's why I'm so appreciative of all of you for being willing to come and talk to us today, give us some information, and together, I do believe we can make Memphis a great city to live in. Thank you. Okay, the importance of your participation. It allows for more robust and engaging conversation. It helps us to fully hear and understand your ideas and beliefs about reimagining policing in Memphis. Chairman Jones, can you take it from there, the goals and the first question, please? Unmute yourself, please.
Okay. So today's goal, our primary goal today is to have an open discussion on how we would reimagine the Memphis Police Department with better transparency, minimal excessive force, improved community relations, and better accountability. All right, so let's begin with visualizing the police department with better transparency. I want you to just share your thoughts on this statement. And I know, and looking at everybody that's online, almost everybody got something I know they want to say about better transparency. And so let's just start it with this. How would you define transparency in the context of policing, and what does that look like? And so y'all can raise your hands all at once, but if you want to, just unmute your mic and we'll try to keep it to where we get those comments and or recommendation as it relates to transparency.
Do you think we have adequate transparency with the police department currently? Do we get all the information we need from them? Is there any particular timetable which you would like to see the information come? Have you always received the information from the police department? I can't get
And you think about think about it in this way. So in the event of an incident that makes the media that's out there now, do you feel that they're being transparent in sharing that information with the public?
No.
Who's speaking?
Okay, now, state your
Councilman
name.
Smiley. Councilman Smiley.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So I think I talked about this multiple times on our body, and I think the administration may be in the process of implementing, I guess, a part of what I would call a transparency portal. But from what I'm hearing, I guess in the event that a complaint is filed, there is no way for the average citizen to track the complaint, where it is in the process, and ultimately, the resolution of it. So what I would like to see is an avenue or means for the average citizen to be able to track what's going on. I think there was an article in the Commercial Appeal that spoke to, when you try to make an open records request. The Commercial Appeal attempted to make an open records request, and the amount of information they wanted, it would cost them $6,000 for information that should be readily available anyway. So I'm of the position that a lot of this information should be public, and we shouldn't be charging, an outrageous amount for information that that should be in the public domain anyway. So I would like to see complaints be made public, information related to the misuse of body-worn cameras be made public, the times or the excessive numbers related to excessive force being made public. Like, those are the type of information that should be made public, as opposed to just some type of big spreadsheet that we receive at the end of the year and say, this is what we have and what we receive. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. So in other words, you would even like for their policies to be someplace for people to review, to know exactly what to expect if they come to the scene with those cameras on.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think for the most part, people understand that the camera's supposed to be on, but what we don't know is if I make a complaint about an officer, misusing the body-worn camera, there's no way for the public to track where it is in the review process. So if I make a complaint to someone's lieutenant or file a complaint online, there's no way for me to track it. And I would like to see something that speaks to that. I mean, we're not recreating the wheel. Chicago has something similar. Seattle, Washington has something similar. I'm just expecting, what I want from Memphis is the best. if other cities can do it, we can do it too.
Okay. Anyone else like to give us their opinion or thoughts on this
Councilwoman
subject?
Johnson,
Yes,
this is
Chairman Robinson.
I am of the same belief as Councilman Smiley that we need a little more transparency, but I wanted more on the ground level, and I know that's on the ground, but citizens need to know, because we get reports all the time that tell us how many times somebody burglarized something in my area, how many accidents we had, how many this, that, and the other, about 15 different things that have gone on. But nobody tells us how they were resolved or if they were ever resolved. Where are they in the process? We have a lot of programs within the police department that work with young people in the community. We don't get any reports on that. We don't know whether they're doing it or not. All I know is when it's time to ask for us some money, they say this is what we have done, but I don't know whether you did it or not because I never got any reports on that. Those things are important to the community. It's important to our youth. And I believe that their presence in the community is beneficial. I have no problem with that, but we need to know you're doing it other than when you're asking me for some money. And that's just my personal belief. And the citizens want to know that you are doing something. When they have an accident, why do I need 10 police cars there for that accident if you can't tell me how you utilizing your time? So at some point, somebody ought to be able to say what that police officer doing with their time all day. When we have so many things going on in our community, and the allocation of their time, we don't even know what they're doing with that. They say the amount of their supervisors, whoever they are are doing that. But as a body, the Memphis City Council and the community needs to know how our dollars are being spent, how they're utilized, and they need to be more transparent about how their time is spent, what cases have been resolved, and what have you done to eliminate, crime in our community other than your presence. Sky Cop camera is present. We don't even know how they're utilizing it because we don't even get a report on that. We got cameras everywhere. Citizens are spending money in their neighborhoods and they say they're using them, but we don't ever get a report that says, over the last 3 months, we utilized cameras to solve these 5 crimes. We're not getting that level of information, and I think it'll be even helpful for them. I don't need to know that we had 10 or 15 carjackings, and what I need to know is how many did you solve?
Exactly. I got you. Okay.
I just want to join the ABM choir for that.
Who's speaking?
Councilman Smiley, I just echo the same sentiments of Chairwoman Robinson.
And
We need to be able to track it.
Got you. So, Clerk Gibson.
Yes, good evening. I'm Clerk Tamika Gibson, Circuit Court Clerk. And basically, they've already said some of the things that I was going to mention. However, I did want to say, as far as transparency, perhaps maybe a weekly press conference is given to the citizens to just let us know what the resolve is in every case that has happened during the week. And also, as far as transparency, usually on any board or committee, there's elected officials and things of that sort. Perhaps maybe inviting one of our radical advocates to the table, because they're the ones that are gathering everyone in the community and talking about what's going on in the police department, So if we're going to be transparent about something, we need to open the door to those that are out there passionately making sure citizens are safe when they're arrested and things of that such. I don't necessarily, agree with everything they say or do, but they definitely need to be a part of discussions as this because they're seeing it every day. You know, I have a daughter that's a police officer with MPD. So I'm very aware of things that are going on. I'm very protective as well because they're putting their lives on the line. However, that are and they're opposing in the atmosphere or the room so that they can, you know, discuss what their plans are, what they see every day. I can tell you all day long about my opinion about something regarding MPD, but I'm not out on the streets, you know, I'm not out there with them seeing it happen every day. So I would like press releases weekly, you know, from the command staff, filling us in every week, letting us know what's going on. And this will eliminate people assuming things. You know, you talk about police, the first thing people think about is what happened in another state. You know, they're talking about people getting killed by police officers and things like that. So what are you gonna do to build the image of MPD to let people know that our officers, there may be a few, you know, bad apples in a bunch, but for the most part, they truly do care for the community.
Fantastic. Let's go to the next question. To what extent do you feel the police department is honest with the public, and why do you feel that way?
I ain't jumping on this. I'm gonna leave it alone.
Would anyone like to address that? Do you think the police department is honest with the public?
Do you think the police department is honest with the public?
We can hear somebody talking.
It sounds like Councilman Smiley.
Okay. How about, do you think the police department is honest? I didn't get any takers on that one. Let's move to the next question.
Councilwoman Johnson, I had a comment.
Okay, who's speaking, please?
This is Shalia Harris, Shelby County School Board Commissioner for District 5.
Okay, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Had a comment on this one again. I guess it kind of ties with the previous one as well. To answer this question, not necessarily. What I would like to see is an actual vision of the police department and overall expectations for themselves and also for community members. I do appreciate direction and data. So show me where we're going, but then also provide the numbers to support it so we can align and really get on one accord as a city. And I think we're lacking that.
That's different. We haven't heard that one, have we, Chairman Jones?
No, we haven't.
That's
Trust
great.
me, we've heard a lot.
We've heard a lot. Okay.
You know, if I can throw in a word or two.
Okay, Commissioner.
You know, I think listening so far, I couldn't agree more with a lot of the points being made here. One of the challenges I see, and as a community organizer, which I spent 25 years of my life doing, is that often when you mention the word transparency, we're also talking about communication. And let's be honest, there is a failure in communication between law enforcement and the public. And I don't think this is a nefarious thing. I think it's only natural. I think that whatever field you're in, you become an expert in your field. You speak a different language than other people. You respond differently. So it's often difficult to translate that from one body to another, especially I would think law enforcement and the public. I really think that there needs to be a role for those who could be in between law enforcement and the public to help with that communication. I know we can always point our fingers, but the reality is that I think there's enough finger pointing to each side on where there are problems. Again, I think people like us, I think like Commissioner Jones just said, you know, he's law enforcement, he's worked in the community. Those kind of people who have that connection to both sides that can understand and can probably bridge the gap. And I think that's what our role should be to some level, is trying to bridge this gap between the community and our law enforcement.
Okay, so don't see any more response. I guess we can go to the next slide.
We're on it, Chairman. The next slide is, I thought it was a nice segue. The last comment, the one before the last comment was a nice segue to this next question.
Okay. So, what information do you think the public needs to know regarding police operations, personnel, and outcome? How often would you prefer to receive this information? So what information you think the public needs to know regarding police operations, how they are internally operating with their personnel and those outcomes?
Mhm. From some of the comments we've already received this evening, I think that question may have been addressed too, in regards to how often and what type of information. Chairwoman Robinson talked about the fact that she would actually like to know what the results were. Don't just tell me what you did, but did it make a difference? And then Mrs. Gibson also mentioned that she would like to see communication on a weekly basis. So I think they've already addressed some of those. Let's move on to the next question, you know?
Okay.
Unless someone who wants to add something.
I wasn't quite clear when you said we've addressed that. How was that addressed?
Chairwoman Robinson addressed it in regards to saying a lot of the information which the police department is sharing is very general. It's not specific enough in regards to the final results. And she would like to see more data in regards to what actually happened. And Mrs. Gibson said that she wanted to see a weekly report about what was happening at the police department.
You know, with our technology today, there should be some way to have some user-friendly process of people. I mean, there's some people who are not, a good percentage of people are not going to plug in or even listen to this data, but everyone should have access to it at any time they want it. People should be able to go online, be able to use a user-friendly software, which allows them to track information about statistics and actions that have occurred. I think that's probably one of the easiest ways we want to try to do communication to the public, creating a portal for them to be able to connect when they want to, or not connect when they don't want to.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask this question. Then what about the information and data when it comes to disciplinary actions as it relates to how the department is handling their employees? So still, let's talk about personnel. How should that be more transparent? What do you want to see out of that? To continue to allow it to go the way it's been going, or just throw in some ideas that you think would be better that shows that transparency?
This is Councilwoman Patrice Robinson. First, I want to say that the Crime Commission, I like the way that they provide data, and especially the little booklet they used to pass out. I don't know if they still do it, with the information where it's handy, you can look at it. And I meant to pull it out so that I could share that with you today. That information is coming from the Crime Commission, and I'm sure they're getting the data, I hope, from the police department. I don't know how they coordinate that. Maybe Mr. Collins can share that with us. But in addition to that, I believe that as we look at personnel, we want to be a little more careful. I know the public deserves to know what's going on. Transparency to me looks like, if you do this, this is the consequence of it. And this is how many people we had to reprimand or whatever it is. I wouldn't want to know any details about that unless something happened, because you don't want to discourage people from being police officers, and people sometimes do make mistakes and they can't correct those mistakes. However, for people who are being treated differently as a public, we want to know. We want to make sure that our police officers are being treated fairly, that some officers get more leniency than others. We need to know what's going on, and we would probably have to have some industrial psychologists to help us figure out how do you determine that. As well as a community, we need to know that there are certain offenses that we're just not going to tolerate, just like you do with criminals. Some things you just don't tolerate, and it doesn't require any discipline. It requires that you go home. But that should be spelled out on the front end, and that should be a part of the report. If it's a monthly report, a quarterly report, annual report, you're going to have different pieces of information that you need, but you may not need them on a daily basis. And someone who does the logistics for the police department needs to determine and say that this information is going to be distributed this period of time, and it should be a part of their chart or whatever they give you. But the Crime Commission has done a great job of pulling certain information together and putting it in a format where citizens can really understand it. Thank you.
Hey, this is Commissioner Ford. I don't have anything right now, but there are 2 people in the chat, and I just wanted to make sure that their statements and their questions are acknowledged into the transcript.
We'll certainly keep a copy of the chat to include with the transcript. So certainly that'll be included.
Thank you.
Okay. Excessive force. How would you define excessive force in the context of policing, and what does it look like? And what role does race play in police use of excessive force? Do we have anyone here who would like to share their opinion on that statements? Below statement? Have you ran into a situation yourself personally by any chance where you thought was maybe too excessive? And was it excessive physically, or could it be excessively verbal?
Okay, I see Dr. Warren has his hands up.
Okay.
Dr. Warren, want to say something?
You know, I think excessive force is sort of like the Supreme Court definition of pornography. You sort of know it when you see it. You know, and it's not something I think you can. It's easy to write down, but doggone, you know, when you see it, you know that's excessive. I think Councilman Ford described this episode very vividly to me of watching someone being pulled over, pulled out of the car, beaten up, let go, and then he followed the policeman to the restaurant, and the guy was having a bad day, and he pulled someone out and beat him up. You know, and so the bottom line is, in our community and in the South, race plays a huge part of this. And if you're African American, you know, you're on the short end of the stick when it comes to brutality. But you know it when you see it. You know, sometimes sometimes when an officer is fighting for his life, then that's one thing. But when you've got 4 or 5 people just wailing on someone for no reason, you know, that's excessive force.
Okay.
And trust me, Dr. Warren, we got a whole lot of different analysis of that, but that to me was the best definition that I heard. You know it when you see it. And that is more true. We've given examples of, would you call this excessive force, or would you call that excessive force? And so probably in all of the sessions that we had, that has been the best definition that I think that we've gotten you know it when you see it. And especially if it's video and it is what it is. And so thank you for that. All right. And we're going to move on and says, okay, currently to your knowledge, what standards exist which an officer's actions can be judged as excessive force? And I think I'm going to have to go back to Dr. Warren's definition. You're going to, that when you see that, to know that it is, can be judged as excessive force. All right, now I'm gonna go on down to that second, because I think we got a real clear answer on excessive force. All right, what de-escalation tactics work best within your community or culture when conflict arises? And well,
Commissioner Jones, I run also part of my nonprofit. I run a laundromat, which is actually a resource center, but it is a great petri dish for issues of this nature. You have a large number of low-income people who often come in and they're bringing their own personal concerns and issues and problems. And you will be amazed at something as simple as a machine not working or something that they would blow up. And it's usually you're just that last person that they have had a long day of problems with. I think one of the most important things is being able to train our officers. Even though I know we do the job, I think we need to do a better job of constantly focusing on trying to train them, especially when they're dealing in environments that they're not accustomed to. Many of these, especially in some poor communities, people, they feel they don't have a voice. And they immediately take on the action that someone's not listening to them, they're not being respected. And it takes a great deal of patience, and also ability to be able to put yourself in someone else's position and understand that, there's a way to de-escalate. What normally happens is that we duplicate what someone else is doing. If they raise their voice, we raise our voice. If they get in our face, we get back in our face. Being able to do the opposite of these things, I've found, have a huge impact of de-escalating a tense situation.
okay. Anybody else want to add in on that?
This is
Chairwoman
Councilwoman.
Robbins?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say, as a part of de-escalation, sometimes you just have to allow people to cool off. The police, the perpetrator, whoever it is, sometimes you just need to step back, everybody sit down and let's just chill for a minute. Then we come back to it. Sometimes it takes that. But as we were talking about the last question, it reminded me of a friend of mine whose sister was apprehended in Rockford, Illinois. And I don't know why they didn't look it up, but they have a list of people who have mental health issues. And she had she was exposing herself in public, and they took her to jail and put handcuffs on her. I don't know what the shackles are called for your legs and feet, but they had them on her hands too. And when they took her to the hospital, she was pronounced dead. And the doctor said what happened was that blood pooled around those cuffs, and they should have taken her to the hospital because she was a mental health patient, and they let her stay there too long and produced blood clots. One thing, I'm sure that just the whole thing got out of hand. But we need a lot of training around not only de-escalation, what to do with these mental health patients so they won't end up like my girlfriend's sister. It's really sad. When they don't take their medicine, I don't know what they have rights, but we don't have any right to help them in their lives. So I believe that we need to have some more training. If we're not capable of doing it, have another team to help us out, and make sure people are getting humane treatment and doctors to help navigate their path rather than making assumptions. Thank you.
And so I'm going to follow up on that one because you touched on something, training, and we've heard a lot of feedback as it relates to training, more training for police officers. And here is, I'll just say some of the things that we've heard. And I even heard another one last night that was even totally different. So one thing is this, that for a police officer, some of the community people say, you know what, they're suffering through PTSD, okay? They see so many different horrific things all day, on and on and on and on and on, and they decided to say, well, I think maybe we should have some additional training. They only get one site eval when they get hired. Then recommended, why can't they do that yearly during in-service training? They got to go there anyway. So even one that I heard last night that has not come up in one of our meetings, virtual reality training, where you put the little mask on and now you the other person. And how do you see yourself in that role and how you want to be treated? So there's so many things that have come up as it relates to training. And so while we're right there, if there are any suggestions or recommendations as it relates to additional training to better help our officers, to better put them in a position to where they're not just reacting because nobody has dealt with those issues that concern them. And I'll leave it right there. If anybody wants to talk about additional training methods or recommendations that you would like to see or recommend.
You know, this is Commissioner Milton. Commissioner Jones, we went together in Kentucky with Commissioner Schaefer, didn't we? It was you part of that. We went there about the opioid issue, and one of the things we were looking at was the situation with when officers go into a hostile situation, let's say a drug situation. One county, what they were doing was that they would have a trained psychologist who actually also would accompany them. Once they control the situation, they would step in. And it was amazing how the system was designed. These counselors had a special uniform. They drove a special car. So drug dealers, people on drugs, they knew who these people were. And they have a policy of not revealing information to the police. Their job is to go in and assist those individuals. Like if there's overdose, they're going to tell, okay, where are these drugs coming from? Give me some information so I can go help your friends. And people are more in line to do that. Unfortunate situation with officers, they get thrown in that situation. There's no trust right from the beginning. And they can't back down from that situation. So it almost automatically escalates. I think we need to look at trying to find ways where we can stop making these officers be all and end all to everything and look at possibly trying to bring other people, other services that can step in. And also that's really, I think, what the big challenge we're having is that we have just made these officers, as we do our schools, we make them responsible for everything while we cut services to the agencies that should be providing these assistance. My opinion.
All right.
Thank you for those comments. Police and the community. Do you think police relationships with the community should be improved? And describe the most positive and the most negative interactions you've had with Memphis police. Do you think we can?
This is Commissioner Ford again. Can y'all hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Well, I'm sitting next to Councilman Ford, so maybe I just need to get on his, hold on.
Unmute.
How about now?
Yeah.
All right. Very quickly, in 2008, when I first got on the city council, I remember the first 30 days getting in, the Westwood community wanted to get a COAC unit in their community center over there off of Western Park. And we were able to do that within that 30-day period. Well, the police director at that time, a month later, stated that he was not going to have COAC units anymore. And I think that's been the philosophy since then. Many of the things that have been said as far as why we don't have COAC units is because of the number of police officers we have. But there's been a debate back and forth as far as if you want the relationships with police officers to be as strong as possible with the community, you have to have police officers in the community. As a matter of fact, Councilwoman Robinson and Councilman Jones, you know, the Walmart that we share over there in Whitehaven, there is a little small building that's attached to that, not too far from where Holmes Road Elementary is. And that was supposed to be built to be a COAC unit for the neighborhood. However, again, the philosophy of MPD's directors then and now has been because of the number of police officers, COAC units are not in respective neighborhoods. But I think that we can find some type of medium because I've seen it actually work. And I know that several of the communities that we represent would like to see more of those police officers in their neighborhoods. I believe that that would actually help out with the relationships. So I don't know what we would probably do. I see the new faces on here as well, which is good. So if anybody has anything that they would want to bring to the table as far as how we could possibly look at coax again, and I don't know if you want to say anything.
Well, you're saying just enough. When it came down to the COAC units, you know, we used to have COAC units quite a few different places. But like you said, when we had one of the directors, I mean, they wanted to take it all the way out. Now, going back to that Walmart, okay? That Walmart was built as a model, okay? They built that, and then the building that's right out in front. A lot of people don't know what it actually was. So what is that little building? But that was for the police department. But Walmart really wanted to start putting Walmarts all inside of the city, not just on outskirts of the city. And they were going to do COAC units at each one of those facilities to try to help the police department out. You know, when they built it, and like I said, during my time when I was on the council before, director just never wanted to move into the place, okay? They had all the hookups, they had everything that the police department needed. But like I said, it was a mall. And if they would have done all of that, they were planning on doing all of that all around the city, free. And you couldn't beat that, I don't think. That was something that we kind of lost. And I mean, we may need to look at that. That's why COAC units are very, very important. They get a chance to know the people in the neighborhood. They know everybody, or they're going around in certain areas. And it's very important. And I think that's one thing that we really kind of need to go back to. I appreciate it.
I have something, Clerk Gibson. One of the positive interactions I've had with MPD is they have an organization called Memphis Shelby PAL. It's a police activities league where police officers volunteer to coach and to mentor young adults, children from probably 6 or 7 years old to 18 years old. I was on that executive board as a parliamentarian, and we had weekly meetings at each precinct developing a plan to interact with the community and children. And so these police officers would volunteer to coach football, to coach basketball, or any type of sports that's available. And also mentorship. I was mentoring teenage girls at youth villages. They would come up to youth villages on Saturdays and I would mentor them. The issue was it's available for inner city, but the funding, they had lack of funding. And I think it should be something that could improve the community if it was a county-wide organization and fully funded. Because there are plenty of officers that are really passionate about coaching these kids. I mean, we had officers from Ridgeway, Appleton, Tillman, I think it was Allen Station at the time. You know, they're all volunteering their free time to interact with kids in the community. And I think something like that needs to be kind of highlighted more. I think this year they had 800 children that was a part of the organization. I'm no longer on the board, but my CAO is. And they had 800 children. So just imagine if something like this was fully supported, where police officers could volunteer their time. And it's so significant for police officers doing it because they can see for themselves. This is a preventative measure, not something that maybe could help, you know, young adults today. But if there are more police officers interacting with children in the community, it could probably bridge that gap of hate for police officers.
And let me follow up with something on that. So when the police department used to fund that. So when I was on the police department, I was one of the first police officers to be in the PAL program. It used to be ran up under the crime prevention. So to your point, yes, it needs to be funded. But here's what I would say about that, because if you're talking about law enforcement, how do we do that collaboratively and together, county, city, to put that in place? Because if every child within the boundaries of this county can really be a part of that program and come out of that program, because I know how well it worked. And for whatever reason that went on, they got out of it for some years, but it was funded by the police department when it first started.
Well, my recommendation is that they look at that again, because it was a very successful program for young children and teens, you know, to receive some type of mentorship and to have that personal, professional relationship between community and police.
Right. It was a lot bigger than that. Our kids would go into other cities and compete against other police departments and their PAL program all across the country. So yes, and that gave them an opportunity. A lot of these kids that were a part of that program never really got out of their community. So this was an opportunity, and they had so many programs: boxing, basketball, softball, football. All of these sports were included, and it was funded by the police department. So maybe we can, that's a good recommendation. Councilwoman Johnson, I'm gonna turn it back to you so we can keep it rolling.
Okay, then. We have heard from various participants that it is so important that the police gets involved with the community. And so many have asked for that COVID units to come back into existence, and they are looking forward to it, okay? Being that we're getting close to running out of time, can we go to the slide in regards to accountability rights? Let's address this. How important is it for the police to be accountable? If you were to grade the police department, what grade would you give them and why? Can I get a lot of feedback? You don't have to tell me why. Just give me a grade from A to F. You don't want to grade them?
Councilwoman Johnson,
Yes?
it's Shalia Harris. I do have some feedback on this part.
Okay.
I would give a grade of a strong C-.
Okay.
In addition to not just accountability for the police department as we think through this, but for us as this advisory council or focus group, what does success look like for us? I don't want us to just, have good conversations, which we do often, but we need to make sure that we have sustainable actions to follow. So I'd be interested in what that looks like too.
Okay. Anyone else?
As it relates to accountability, I don't think we have, the police department has thought about accountability as they do in logistics organizations where you're accountable for everything. I'm just going to give you an example, and I don't know how you would make this happen, but somebody could. Young man was speeding down the street running from the police. His car pulled up at the end of my driveway. He got out, left his car running, and he ran off into the woods behind the house. There were 3 or 4 police cars that pulled up behind him. Then a car from Mississippi pulled up as well, talking about he was supporting his friend that was in another car. And I didn't say anything other than I just wanted to know what was going on. Y'all got me blocked in here in my own house. And was a car stolen? It was actually a rental vehicle. They didn't send any dogs in the neighborhood, and I was just concerned, don't leave it, whoever it is out there behind my house. I don't want them visiting me over in the night. But here, this is the thing about accountability. Not one person that got out their car had a camera. I'm not talking about it. I can't tell whether it's on or off. I'm saying it wasn't even on their body. So I don't know how you would hold somebody accountable if you don't even have the equipment that we spent all this money on. I remember my first budget hearing with the city council, we spent a lot of money on those cameras, and they're supposed to wear them and use them. You're chasing somebody, and you don't have any data of it because then nobody have anything on. And I'm gonna leave it at that. To me, we've got to be more accountable.
Do you think the reason that we're having a difficult time addressing accountability is because maybe the police officers are not being told that they have to be accountable at the end? Do you think they expect to have to respond to questions from their superiors? Or what do you think happens in regards to their accountability after such an incident?
Probably their policies, and if they don't enforce their policies and what's in their policies, I think we need to see that. If you want to be transparent so that you can get to accountability, I think you need to know what those policies are, and knowing what the policies are, now you can hold people accountable. Okay, well, you didn't do this. You didn't have a camera on. The policy says you should. That's what I think is needed if you want to talk about accountability. What are the policies that governs these actions of things that we want to see? And are they being enforced when they're not applied?
But who should hold the policemen accountable for their actions?
They have superiors. They're superiors. We paying them.
Should it? I mean, we've had comments. Should the city council be responsible? accountable for their actions?
Their superiors. Either they
In
work.
another meeting I had today, someone mentioned that the city council should be responsible for holding them accountable. But I'm just saying, I'm just relaying the news.
Right. I'm just saying, we've heard that it should come from the director. It should possibly be the mayor. So those are some of the questions I think when we're going through this reimagining, we're going to have to find out who should actually hold the policemen accountable. Because right now, if we can't say who's responsible, surely they don't know who they should answer to.
And yes, they do. In every organization, there's a hierarchy. And whether we respect it or not is another issue. But there is a hierarchy. There is somebody that they report to. And even the police director reports to the mayor.
That's
So
what we're saying. Where does it stop? And that's the situation.
That's correct.
It seems like it's being passed on to the next level in every situation. Not in every situation, but in some situations. Let me correct that.
They want the hierarchy to be paid, but you got to do the work. And if you don't do the work, then we have to reorganize what we're doing.
Okay.
All right, so let me go because Dr. Warren had his hand up and Ms. Harris has hers up. So Dr. Warren, go ahead, and then we're going to go to Ms. Harris.
You know, I think the bottom line is we're all responsible for this. The council, the commission, mayors, citizens, we're responsible. We need to make CLRB have a little bit more authority. And, you know, part of the problem that we've got is we've got this divided government in our county where we've got county and city and all this other stuff. So it's really easy to divide and conquer if you don't want to get any reform. So I think all of us have to assume we're responsible and do our part to try to make it work. And we can't pass the buck. So we do our little part, the commission does their part, the mayors do their part, CLRB does their part, the business community does their part, the police department, the sheriff's department does their part, and then we can actually get success.
Good point.
Okay. All right. Ms. Harris, I saw your mic open.
Yeah, very quickly, I agree with what Dr. Warren said, and also Council Chairwoman Robinson. In addition to that, you know, whoever controls the budget, whoever's paying these leaders and paying police officers, that's where the highest level of accountability should be.
Okay.
All right. I believe we have hit all the topics which we were asked to address. Am I correct, Mrs. Smith?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
I don't know. Did we talk about the CLRB?
They didn't bring it up. If somebody wants to talk about CLRB, feel free at this time.
Yeah, because we got a lot of feedback in previous meetings on how people would like to see that, and to give them, to what Dr. Warren said, a little bit more powers to be able to really be meaningful, because from what we heard, most of the people would say it's like the fox watching the hen house, because they don't have any powers. They're just there as a superficial board. And then and with the police department and law enforcement, they're handling it themselves, and then the public hears no more about it. And so what do you think as it relates to CLRB that could be implemented that could support giving them more powers to be able to be an independent group that is able to be transparent, hold people accountable, and those actions that we've been talking about tonight?
Well, you know, that goes to the point I was talking about earlier about having that in-between body that really has some teeth, that has a connection to the community, and also has the ear of law enforcement. And I think what we do is we create these bodies, but we don't give them the power to actually implement the things we want. And they become nothing more than a figurehead, not to blame them, but to blame the fact that if we're going to create these bodies, we need to invest in them so they have the ability to actually to act.
I would say, this is Clerk Gibson, that as far as CLRB is concerned, we need to put people in the community on these type of boards. You know, you can have, I mean, and when I say people community, I'm not talking about pastors, just pastors and elected officials and things. Put some community activists on those type of boards, and I think it's going to be more successful because, like I said, these are people who are advocating for their communities more so than perhaps an elected official. You know, I can say that. And you need to put them at the table. Listen to them. I know sometimes they're, you know, there's a lot of language that goes out from them, but a lot of these people know what they're saying. You know, they know what they're seeing. And I just think for a committee like such as CLRB, there needs to be an activist on that type of board.
We have definitely heard that comment before. It's important to be very selective of the individuals you place on that committee, and it has to be individuals who understand both sides. It can't just be a supporter of the police or just an individual for the victims per se. They were asking that people be trained if necessary, but they need to have a prepared background to make those type of decisions. Not just like you say, elected official, somebody that's willing to just sit there and make their best judge. They need to be trained individuals, professionals to a certain extent.
And you know what? We have went through all of the questions that we had prepared for you all. But generally with me, when we get into these conversations and I listen to what I hear, I have another question. And so this is relevant to everything that we talked about tonight, but we barely touched on this. So let's talk about leadership at the top of that law enforcement agency. And so just add some comments or recommendations. What do you think that person should have that would be leading that organization as it relates to the use of excessive force, accountability, transparency, all the things that we talked about today, but we did not talk about who would actually be leading. And I don't even want to get into any names of that, but the characteristics that you would want to see in a leader that's leading that organization. And then I'm just going to open the floor up for any comments to that. I don't care about names, who are that. I'm more on the actual qualities that you would want to see in the leadership coming out of that organization.
Councilman Jones, I would like to see someone who really has a heart for the work, not just experiencing it, but really has a heart for justice and for people in general. Whatever is in your heart, I know that will come out in your actions. And so someone who's not only dedicated, but really have a heart for justice and want to see the city do better.
Okay.
Chairman Jones, I would like
Yes.
somebody who understands the community and the community trust. I think that's going to be so important for us to move forward. It's for individuals that can relate to the citizens, may have some personal experiences for whatever reason in regards to policing, maybe as a child, a teenage, or a parent situation, or family arrangement, whatever. But I would like to see somebody who is definitely part of the community and respected and trusted by the community.
Okay. And Dr. Warren?
I think we have to get someone who will come in and listen, but we need someone who can communicate, and not just communicate to the community, but to the MPD about what their real mission is, and it's to protect and serve, and to help us stop and prevent murders among our young people who are killing each other. We need someone who's going to come in with an idea that we're going to go out and we're going to take whatever we need to do to lower the murder rate in the poorest parts of our city, and then bring in social services there. It's going to take that. It's not just going out and arrest people. We've got to bring in social services. We've got to bring in psychologists. We've got to bring in, food if necessary to be able to save these young people's lives. And we need someone who's going to be committed to stopping the bleeding, because we know and studies show that if you can lower the murder rate, you can actually improve everything you need, from education to, job development, to neighborhood growth, and to property growth and property value growth in the areas in our city that have been left behind. So we have to go for those areas that have been left behind and make them safe again. So I want someone who's looking for that, who is trying to make our neighborhoods safe again and to stop our kids from killing each other.
I'd like to say too that I don't think it's solely the responsibility of MPD, to fix our community. We're talking about parents here. I was a single parent of 4 children for 20 years. All of my children are successful because of how I raised them. So to say to MPD that you're responsible for making sure my child doesn't kill someone, I think that's a bit on the side of error. I do believe that the person needs to have knowledge of our communities, but I just think the expectation needs to be clear of what that position holds. What are our expectations of MPD? To enforce the law, that's their job, but there's going to have to be equal application from our communities as well. Parents need to know how to raise their children. Young adults need conflict resolution. There's so many other issues that warrants the crime that we're experiencing in our communities. So I think this is good to talk about on the MPD side of it, but what about the community? What about the people who are out there actually committing the crimes? What are we doing to help them? What's out there to promote, whatever psychological help or educational help or conflict resolution help? What do we have to kind of meet in the middle here?
So part of what I'm talking about is that bleeding out strategy, which has to deal with lowering the murder rate. And it includes everything you just mentioned, Ms. Gibson, everything. It also includes the fact that, if you lower the murder rate, you make it more likely you can do all of those social interventions. But if you don't lower the murder rate, it makes it really hard to do that. So we know that we've got about 300 to 400 young people in this city that are involved in really violent gang activity. And if we can focus our psychological and social and police efforts on them, and that's why I want the next police director to be committed to, we can lower that murder rate. And when we do that, we can have every community over time equally as safe. And when that happens, people can have the same result you have with your kids. I've got a family that came to my church that has been suffering from, the effects of systemic racism and poverty for years, that we sort of befriended. We have one of those children who's in jail in Utah now for like 20 years for sex crime. Another one who just got shot up in Binghamton when he was over there acting sort of like an idiot, and with my car, and got shot. The car got shot and destroyed. So but it's not that he didn't have a chance. It's that we have to make sure that other kids have the same effect. He, fortunately, was arrested. And when he got arrested, you know, I got to go over there because I was called. The police did a great job with him. He was being a complete jerk. They could have easily thrown him into the car. They could have beat him up. They took him. They were calm with him. They got him in the car. He was obviously distressed after being shot at. So, you know, we've got this violent sort of situation going on where people have AK-47s, and we have to address that. And we can't think that we're going to somehow address the root problem until we stop the AK-47 deaths. And that's where I'm at. I'm not saying there's not a root problem and parents shouldn't do all this other stuff, but we can't help them do that until we stop people from killing each other with high-powered weapons. And that's what I want our next police chief to commit to. And everything else everyone said, I agree with. But I think that's a huge thing we have to do, because as a doctor, you know, if it wasn't for what is the American, you know, Rifle Association or whoever it is that wants everyone to have an AK-47, you know, we would be looking at this as a medical issue. Nowhere could you have so many people being killed as we are right now with violent firearms and not think it's a medical problem. You would take the same sort of approach you would do with a pandemic to stop it. So this is sort of, how do you stop the pandemic of violence? We're already trying to stop the pandemic of COVID. So it's not that I don't disagree with anything you said, Ms. Gibson. It's just that this is sort of a tough thing for people to wrap their arms around, because everything you said is true. And what I'm trying to say is, if we can stop the violence, we can focus on everything that you said. And I don't know, maybe, I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
It does.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Harris.
I'm not biased on this comment, and that's okay. But I think that everything starts with our children. We need someone who is intentional and consistent about building a strong relationship with our school district. That's where it starts.
Oh, I got some more school folks on here. Y'all don't want to comment on that? I think that's a good segue in y'all jumping on in this conversation.
All colleagues.
Yeah.
That just means they agree.
They heard you.
This is Darling. I'm on the call also representing Shelby County Schools. What Dr. Warren said and what board commissioner said is all works together. We need to make sure that we focus early in event with our children as it relates to violence, as to what we can do. We're doing that now. We've been doing it for a while. And as you know, we've reduced the amount of incidents in school as it relates to gun violence and incidents happening in the school. So we're trying to see what we're doing, if it can spread out throughout the city and the county. So that's a great opportunity there to start as early as we can with our children to make an impact. And listening to all the comments, I think this is a great opportunity to refocus how we look at policing. As you all know, I'm a retired police chief from the city of Miami. Did a lot of work there. And Commissioner Jones, you had the opportunity to travel there with me and see some of the work that we've done. But we're in this together. We're going to be here to help and to make a difference in this community. And I think this is a great start.
Thank you, Chief Donovan. So I think we have stated all from all the questions that we had, and believe it or not, y'all sparked a lot more questions that we hadn't even asked before. And so I really want to thank each and every one of you for participating in this conversation, and to bring about ideals recommendations, and a new ideology about reimagining policing as it relates to our community. And I can't thank each and every one of you enough. I know that Councilwoman Johnson, she's going to bring her closing remarks as well. I believe this will be our last meeting, and then we will be moving forward to sending your voices over to Complexity to formulate these recommendations to give to the mayor. And so Tanya has been a big help with us on this, and I want to once again thank all of you for joining us in this conversation. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Councilwoman Johnson, who has traveled with me through this process. And we have had some interesting conversations, not just from you guys, but from communities, from ex-felons, from retired police officers, and everybody has talked about what they would like to see. And so with that being said, my cohort on the Legislative Committee, Councilwoman Johnson, I'm going to let you close us out.
Well, thank you, thank you. I too want to say thank you to Ms. Meeks for her assistance throughout this process. Thank you, Chairman Jones, for working with me. We have had a very interesting process. Thank you to Chairwoman Patrice for encouraging me to participate in this setting. And thank you to everyone tonight for being a part of it. Because what we have learned is going to take everybody working together to make it happen. It is no way that this task can be achieved by any one person or any one organization. It is far too big for any one of us. So I just want to say thank you. I hope we can depend on you when we call you in the future and ask you for your assistance to carry it on forward, because there's a lot of work to be done. Again, just thank you and have a blessed night.
Thank you, everybody. Just in closing out, it's Tanya again. Councilwoman and Chairman have been an amazing dynamic duo in working through this project. They've been a lot of fun outside of anything else. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of rundown of what comes next. We will pull the audio, of course, from this and all the focus group meetings. Altogether, we'll end up with about 35 focus group meetings. And we will pull the audio from them and pull the audio, transcribe everything, and then pull the recommendations from each of the meetings into a full report about the findings for the most part. That will go to the mayor. It should go to the mayor. I think it's scheduled to go to the mayor maybe December 20th, maybe a little bit before then. And then from there, I expect there to be another phase of this, but we'll see. But from there, we see what the mayor's response is and what the mayor's office's response is to the report, and then we go from there. But that's the order of things going forward. Any questions for me on that at all? Yes. I have another comment. I want to make sure we recognize our staff that helped us in this process. Yes.
Perry and Rebecca Garcia, and who is your staff? Chairman?
Lakeitha Barnes.
Thank you for helping us so much. I want to recognize them. Thank you.
I might try to steal them to come work with me.
No.
You can't have them.
I pay in food. Any other questions before we close out? Because I want to make sure everyone is clear on what happens next, and and especially because we definitely value your input, and we want you to know that we will try in every instance to include every bit of the input. Even if we have to whittle it down a bit, but we want to include everything. Then if there's nothing else, I say good night to everyone, and thank you so much again. Great conversation.
Yeah.